Thank you for listening to Star Trek Comic Book Review. Today we're going to cover the recently released Star Trek Holo-Ween, issue number 1. This issue will be covered in detail in the podcast episode 404. While you're listening, please feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you.
So, Holo-Ween number 1. Published date, October 2023. Writer Chris Sequeira. I'm sure I didn't do that right. Sorry, Chris. Artist Joe Eisma. Colorist Charlie Kirchhoff. Letterer Clayton Cowles. Design and production by Neil Yataki. Senior editor Heather Antos. Editorial assists Vanessa Real. Okay, so we got a mere 3 covers. Cover A presents Troy and Picard in the foreground on alert, with a Borg-looking Jack the Ripper, complete with top hat, coming up behind them. The grid background tells us they are in a holodeck room, but the spooky shadows, red lights, and fog tell us it's not a normal holodeck jaunt. Cover B is dominated by a green Medusa head with demonic eyes, a creepy smile, and snakes ready to attack. Deanna is in the foreground, understandably freaking out with fear. I mean, look at that mouth. She is really fearful. Ah! Oh, that one was by Suspiria Vilches. And the first cover was by Francesco Francavilla. Cover C presents a black and white version of cover A. While the Enterprise D makes her way through highly energetic solar storms between Argelius 2 and Enoch 7, the rough ride is unsettling the entire crew. None more so than Counselor Troy, whose empathetic abilities makes her sense the fear of the entire crew, which is almost overwhelming her. The almost crippling effects of the magnified anxiety and fear from the entire crew makes her think how the entire crew could be similarly affected if they experienced what she is experiencing. The ship exits the storm and emerges into normal space. The entire crew breathes a collective sigh of relief. The counselor emerges from the turbolift onto the bridge with a proposal for the captain and crew. As a way to flip the bird at fear itself, yes, I'm paraphrasing, she wants to have the whole crew take part in an old Earth tradition called Halloween. We can have a themed party complete with fancy dress. Data chimes in with more details, saying the Origins had participants rising above evil and terror by dressing as monsters and demons. Worf mentions a similar Klingon holiday called Mikran Day. The captain agrees despite its juvenile overtones. Data initiates a computer search on all related data to help them with their Halloween preparations. Right outside the ship, in orbit around a nearby planet, is a red energy entity, somewhat familiar to the people of Earth, Rigel 4, Deneb 2, and countless other worlds. The entity's amazing abilities pick up on the thoughts of fear and terror and shock and thinks it's time to feed. The red energy being makes the jump from the planet to the Enterprise D, entering the holodeck, a place it thinks it can make use of. 2 crew members are enjoying an unlikely snowy ski run. As they wrap up their skiing for the day, they are overcome by the entity who finds their sudden fearful reaction to it delectable. Though the entity is able to bind the 2 crew members and keep them in a state of nourishing fear, the entity must have more. Elsewhere in the ship, Picard is having a meeting with his senior staff, discussing business of the day, including the Halloween party, when Worf walks in and reports 2 crew members are missing. They are not in the holodeck they were last in before their comm badges went offline. Picard orders a thorough search. Deanna detects a small seed of fear in Captain Picard. Elsewhere, the obnoxious Lieutenant Block, who is a medical security officer, is in sickbay poo-pooing Dr. Crusher when she reminds him his priority is to review security for quarantined medical materials. He says he will get to it, but first he has to investigate a lead on the missing crew members. He leaves and enters a strangely dark holodeck. In short order, the entity claims a new victim. Reports of missing crew members from all over the ship filter into the bridge. Word gets around, and the anxiety levels start increasing all over the ship. The fear levels go through the roof when Rejak announces his presence throughout the ship and says he will feed, and doom is coming your way. Picard recognizes the name and recalls Kirk's dealings with an entity going by that name. Picard goes on ship-wide intercom and orders a ship-wide lockdown. Reg comes into Deanna's quarters in a state of total freakout, thinking he is somehow responsible for the Rejak infestation. Deanna settles him down and gets him on his way to his quarters when a half-dozen other people are at her door, looking for help with their overwhelming feeling of fear and dread. Meanwhile, Data sees an anomalous power supply conduit surge in a holodeck and decides to check it out. He finds himself locked in, and the deck changes into an 1880s London scene, not unlike his Sherlock Holmes programs. Lieutenant Block is in period-appropriate clothes and a strange, malevolent sound to his voice. He confronts Data and attacks him with a walking cane sword. Data easily brushes the possessed human to the ground while taking the sword from him. Rejak ups the stakes by injecting his current host with Borg nanites that he took from medical isolation. The Borgified Rejak Blocks has two fearsome blades instead of his hands and attacks Data again. Despite Data's fast moves to avoid the blade attacks, he is eventually beheaded by Rejak. Picard from the bridge is getting a report from Worf, who says it's pandemonium where he is. Rejak has turned Mr. Data into the Frankenstein monster, and together they are exiting Holodeck 9. They are moving into the ship and spreading fear like a contagion throughout the crew. As they advance, Rejak says he will make the entire vessel a kingdom of horrors. To be continued.
Yikes. Like a haunted house.
Yeah, he should have said that. Kingdom of horrors, haunted house. There you go, haunted ship.
So, Block is the one possessed by Rejak right now. So, what happened to those first two ensigns? Did he just drain them somehow or kill them?
Apparently not important because they don't tell us. Plus, other people were going missing too, not just the first two.
Yeah, exactly.
Years. So I don't know. I don't think the writer cares. I don't know if we're gonna find out.
I just wonder if I mean, there's a lot of crew members disappearing. So are they all going to come back at the end, or is this going to be a really gruesome ending with like hundreds of people missing?
I don't know. And they may just be in a specific location they haven't found yet. I don't know.
That's somehow shielded from all the computers.
Well, yeah. So they were talking about their badges going offline, but internal ship sensors, could they have been used? I agree with you, they could have been, but they never mentioned them.
Or the little Mr. Microphone thing that could pick up a heartbeat somewhere on the ship.
The Mr. Microphone. You are going back. So that was court-martial?
Yeah.
Was that
where they were
court-martial did that?
Yep.
Oh boy, that was a deep cut.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where they had to remove all the heartbeats from the people that the microphone touches. There's still one more. No.
The ship's computer is amazing what it can do when the script calls for it.
Exactly. All right. So obviously this is a continuation of Wolf in the Fold, which was
a TAWS episode.
And it's I mean, that would also be kind of a horror episode of Star Trek with Jack the Ripper slasher type vibe.
I definitely agree.
Where Scotty and Piglet are going around killing everybody. You get the Piglet reference?
No,
yeah, the guy who plays the person that Regex in the most was Piglet from the old Winnie the Pooh shows.
Oh, that actor. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Hold on.
The actor.
I thought he wasn't in him until towards the end. Because wasn't he the doctor, or not the doctor, the lawyer? Wasn't he the lawyer or something?
No, he was the investigator that was there to investigate the whole thing, but in reality, he was the killer all along.
Oh, okay. Piglet, that's funny.
But yeah, he's played by Piglet.
Yeah, well, that guy was in a lot of stuff in the 60s.
Right. Yeah, it's always funny listening to watching shows and he shows up, or the guy who plays Winnie the Pooh, because that guy was in a lot of like Superman episodes and stuff like that. And every time he would start talking, my wife would be like, Winnie the Pooh's in this episode again? Oh, that's Professor whatever. That's invented some crazy thing. Yeah, so it is funny hearing those voices pop up in these old shows. But anyways, that episode written by Robert Bloch, which obviously
nice
Ensign or Lieutenant Bloch is named after him.
Oh, funny.
And Robert Bloch obviously being the author of Psycho.
Oh, he wrote the script?
He wrote the novel.
Or the novel?
Yeah, he wrote the novel.
Was based on?
Yeah.
Oh, how interesting. Wow, you did some research.
Well, I mean, Psycho is one of my favorite books, so I kind of already knew that one.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, so they brought Rejek back, which I think was a great move, because I think when you really think about it, Rejek is kind of as long as you buy into the idea that this incorporeal being can do all the things it can do, it can infest and control people, it can infest and control computers and electronics.
Yeah.
So the fact that he can do all of these amazing things makes it a little hard to believe, but then it also makes it a very formidable villain, bad guy,
right.
Dangerous
100%.
entity.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like the whole slasher thing. I mean, this one doesn't have anybody getting outright killed, but I mean, obviously it's probably going to at some point. But the old episode, he would take over somebody, give them a good stabbing, give somebody a stabbing, and then he could move on to the next person.
Yeah, right. So apparently he found that, although we're not seeing in this book yet, that threatening someone with the fear of death and then actually killing them and then experiencing their fear as they die is just great for this guy.
Yeah, exactly.
We haven't actually literally, like you say, seen that in this book so far.
Right. Yeah.
Although those two first people, those skiers, they could be dead.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting them to come back. Although I was pretty excited to see Ensign Sarah Chambers. Obviously, I was just like, ooh, that's a good name. I hope she makes it past the second page. Nope.
So the idea that Rejak is an incorporeal being that originated on Earth and then spread to the stars as mankind did is cool and spooky. So that's pretty cool. And then the idea that he can enter people and turn them into puppets, and then to commit bloody murder, to incite the fear that it feeds on, is a great horror concept. And it's not 100% unusual. I mean, we've seen things kind of sort of like this. But this was back in the 60s, and I don't know how many times they used this trope prior to this episode of Star Trek, but it's a pretty cool and scary concept. The idea that you can't kill Rejak makes it potentially the focus of a horror film franchise, just like Freddy, Michael, Jason. So there you go. Kirk was able to get rid of it finally by beaming it into space, but he never knew if he killed it. So it always keeps the door open.
He didn't just beam it into space. He dispersed the atoms of Piglet into space. So it's not even like he reformed him.
Okay, but the thing is, the physical entity that was Piglet, as you keep calling him,
Yeah, just because I can't remember
is
his
one
name.
thing. Is one thing. But the incorporeal entity, Kirk had no idea what effect that was going to have on the incorporeal entity.
Right.
So it leaves the door open for him to come back over and over again, because you can't kill him, or at least as far as we know, we can't kill him.
Right.
We don't know of a way to kill him yet.
And obviously, it didn't kill him. It showed up today.
There you go. And then the last thing I want to mention is, there are parallels between the Dexter series of books that presented the Dark Passenger as the entity that inhabited Dexter and made him do all the murderous things he did. The TV series didn't talk about that, but the books sure made it sound like the Dark Passenger was a real thing, not just a metaphorical thing or is a figment of Dexter's imagination. I mean, they made it, especially some of the books in the series, Dexter series. One in particular went into more details about the Dark Passenger and was talking about its history, as there being multiple Dark Passengers, and that they inhabited, hundreds or thousands of people as long as Homo sapiens were around. So that's kind of scary. And it kind of seems a little bit like Rejak, if there was more than one Rejak, and there very well could be. I don't know. They never say that.
Yeah, if he was a species, yeah. Right.
So they both originated on Earth, or at least that's as far back as human knowledge knows about. And it inhabits people. It makes them kill people. Does the Dark Passenger feed on fear? I don't think they ever mention that, but who knows? Maybe it is. I don't know. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention that.
Seems a little bit of a stretch.
Well, is it?
Well, I mean, the fact that it feeds off fear and it is Rejak is a little bit, but no, the parallels
I didn't say it is.
Okay.
I didn't say I didn't say that the Dark Passenger is Rejak. I'm just saying that we don't know that the Dark Passenger is not feeding off of fear. We don't know that.
Yeah. And we don't know for sure that it's not just all in his head.
That is possible also. Although, again, as I say, one of the books made it sound like the third-person omniscient narrator was giving the Dark Passenger's history.
Right.
As opposed to it coming out of Dexter's head, but who knows?
Right.
There is nothing new under heaven and earth. Just recycled ideas.
Well, talking about recycle, that leads into my little comments about Rejak.
Yes, go.
All right, so obviously he originated in the show, but this is not the first time he's re-shown back up. We had the 1986 TA's DC Comics issues number 22 and 23 was called Wolf on the Prowl, which had Rejak on a temple on Enoch 4, and Kirk, who was in charge of the Excelsior at the time, had to trap him in a wormhole vortex, which I've never heard of before or since. So that was kind of cool. We covered that back in issue 221, if anybody wants to go back and listen to it. And then also Wildstorm took a stab at Rejak, this time in the Next Generation time frame, embraced the wolf. And this might sound familiar. Rejak takes over a holodeck, and they are at Enoch 7, and it ends with Picard being able to trap Rejak in one of those Spock coffin torpedoes. And then he gives the torpedo to the inhabitants of Enoch 7 so that the people there can have Rejak answer for all the troubles he's caused on their planet. And that was... so we covered that back in episode 198.
So was this a direct sequel to that?
That's what I'm wondering, because even Data says that he's encountered Rejak before. He said he and other Starfleet officers have stopped him in the past. And I was just like, wait a minute. Are you actually making a reference to a Wildstorm comic that came out 23 years ago? If so, that's that's a good deep cut, but definitely not something that IDW normally does.
They were traveling between Argelius 2 and Enoch 7.
I know, isn't that weird?
I
and and it's
know.
so weird that Enoch 5 is the one that's in the Kirk story. So it's just like,
Right.
how is all three different publishers all coming up with the same little area when it wasn't actually referenced in the episode as being Enoch? I mean, this is something that was made up for DC Comics, and then Wildstorm and now IDW is just ran with it, which I think is kind of
Well,
cool.
is this like a nod to that Wildstorm comic then?
I hope so, because it's too big of a coincidence not to be.
Right. Because
Yeah, so
I mentioned Picard recalling what happened to Kirk, but it didn't
yeah,
say that in the comic. I just assumed that.
right. Yeah, so Data's actual words were, "You're capable of possessing humans, defeated by myself and others in previous encounters with Starfleet." So that was what really got me going. Like, are they actually making
Wait
a
a
reference
minute.
to the Wildstorm issue? Wow, I thought that was really cool.
Cool. That's good. That's great.
So yeah, so we got Wildstorm referencing DC Comics Volume 1, which was a crazy time. That was when between the third and fourth movie where they were on the Excelsior because the Enterprise was exploded.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So is that canon now in this too? I don't know. I mean, seems like it is if it was Enoch 4.
Well, I think the writer knows his comic book as well as TV show history. So Chris, he may have factored a lot of things into this.
Right. So good stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I
But
haven't caught
it
any
didn't
other
seem like it was
references.
bogged down. So that's good.
Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, it was confusing. I mean, if somebody just read that and Data saying that they've encountered before, I would be confused if I hadn't already read that 23-year-old comic book.
And I read and just moved on.
Right, like you did. Yeah,
Yes.
never.
I just read it and moved on.
No,
Look, his head's chopped off.
So I was really excited about those references.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even in that other one, Data does go into a holodeck that's all decked out just like this one, and he encounters, a Sherlock Holmes type encounter with the Jack the Ripper, if you remember. Mm-hmm. If you can remember us reviewing that back in 2015. It's been a while.
Not really.
I loved it. I loved that it tied into it. But I do have a question about Enoch 7, if I may.
Sure.
So Enoch 7 means that it's the seventh planet in the Enoch system, right? So the star's name is Enoch, and Enoch 7 is the seventh planet, right?
Seventh planet from the star. Right. Typically, that's what that is. Yeah.
And then the solar storm that they had to pass through was in between Argalius 2, which would be the second planet in the Argalia system, and Enoch 7, which is the seventh planet in a completely different
star system,
solar system. So that's a big chunk of space to say, oh, we passed through it. I mean,
well, it could have been more on the side of Enoch 7 than the other planet.
Yeah, but what a weird way.
You don't know where, is it? Okay.
I mean, it's like we passed through a storm cloud between Alpha Centauri 3 and Sol System 2, right? I mean, it's just like that's weird because there's a lot of planets in between there that you were also in between, Just
those are the habitable ones. I mean, so they're probably referring to Enoch 2, and then, well, they're probably referencing those specific planets because there may be Starfleet or known civilizations on those two particular planets.
Okay. Nah, I don't know. I just thought it was weird. I mean, and if you are talking about that big of a space, I mean, how big was the solar storm that you couldn't just go around it?
Well, I completely agree with that. The idea that the solar storm was precious. And by the way, what is a solar storm? Doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, you would think a solar storm would be coming from a star, but you're traveling between two star systems,
right?
And so is this a storm that's just out in the middle of open space, not near any star, or is this a storm that's related to Enoch, the Enoch star.
Right.
Since you're going to Enoch, and then you pop out of the storm, and then you're pretty close to Enoch 7. So, I mean, the whole thing is like, it's a little confusing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just, like I said, when I first read it, I just kind of like went through it and was just like, okay, it's between 2 planets. But then I started thinking about it. I'm like, that's 2 planets in 2 different solar systems. So that's a little weird wording.
Mm.
And I'm just wondering, I mean, why is everybody so shaken up about it? It's just, I mean, we've seen them fly through nebulas and storms before, and it didn't like make people so anxious that they had to have big parties.
Because it's a Halloween story, and people have to be shaken up. There has to be some spooky fear. It's a Halloween story, Donovan. Come on, get with the program. But I completely agree with you. I mean, they fly through all kinds of interstellar anomalies, and they don't get freaked out.
Right.
So I thought the idea that block, Borgified block / Rejak, was able to take Data's head off. I thought that was pretty interesting that without the Borg nanites, he was just a human that was controlled by Rejek, so far slower, weaker than Data, and that Data was able to, give me a break, pal, and just knock him to the ground.
Yeah, just catch the sword in his hand and be like, you can't hurt me. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Exactly. I thought that was pretty cool. And then of course Rejak brings out his edge, injects himself with the Borg nanites or whatever. Which again, it's just fascinating how these nanites are able to construct whole shoulders and arms and hands, mechanical ones, and view things, with a spooky green lens on it, on the face, and all these things just grow out of block.
Right.
Just that's a little, it's fine. I mean, it's combining the ultimate nemesis from Next Gen with the significantly nasty TOS nemesis. So that's great. That's great. 2 great villains in one threat. That's great. But I thought that was funny.
Well, let me just say one thing real quick on that, because there was another time when Star Trek tried to combine those two. So in the first Star Trek Starfleet Academy novels, which was based in the Kelvin timeline when they were all in school.
Right.
There's the first novel is all about this cloud that goes around and murders women and things that they're on campus. So like San Francisco has to go into like a lockdown at night because of this cloud going around killing people in the dark and inducing fear and all this stuff. They never actually come out and say it's Rejak, even though, oh my gosh, it's the exact same plot of Rejak. But they also never come out and say it's definitely Borg either. I mean, there's like one reference in the book where the swarm or whatever you want to call it, this cloud fog, it says something like I almost said exterminate. It says something that's kind of like a Borg thing to say, but they never actually say it's Borg nanites. They never actually say it's Reject, but it is exactly like if you combine those two. So it's kind of weird that you just mentioned that they're literally doing it and actually saying it, whereas in the Starfleet Academy book they kind of hinted at both of them, but never actually came out and said it.
I just wanted to go on to the idea that Data's severed head can still speak. So the idea that even removed from the rest of his body, that Data can still think and speak. I guess he can still see and everything else. That makes a lot more sense than when Deadpool and Wolverine can do it. But how many of Data's components are stuffed into his head? I mean, his brain, okay, so positronic brain, we know that's there. And I would think the speaker, that is his voice, sure, no problem there. Eyes, sure, I guess. But what about the power source? So, yes, I'm thinking too much.
Yeah.
I always assumed the power source was somewhere in the trunk of the body. So the idea that he can still... well, somewhere between the off switch and the head.
Well, I'll agree with you. I really balked at him talking here. I was just like,
Mm-hmm.
wait, we've seen him get his head taken off, and it's just a dead dummy head.
Yeah.
It's not Brent Spiner talking. But
Right.
then I thought, oh well, in Nemesis they do have before when his body is not connected, and it does talk and stuff. So I was just like, I guess I'll have to give it to him that there is a precedent. But usually when we saw Data to get his head taken off, he was just a mannequin head.
Exactly.
So speaking of Data's head, when he gets reattached and looks like Frankenstein's monster, it kind of took me out that it's the Universal Studios version, the classic,
as opposed to
the classic movie version. Well, aside from the book, I mean, the book, he doesn't look like that. He doesn't have, doesn't look like, he doesn't have the flat head and the bolts and stuff.
Well,
this guy
okay,
seems this Data seems more like the Universal Studios version than the novel version.
It's a nod to that, but I think it's also a nod to Christopher Lee's version of Frankenstein in the Hammer movies. So
right,
so that scar on his right cheek,
mm-hmm.
with the stitching and stuff. If my memory serves me correctly, I think that's the same way as Christopher Lee was in the first Hammer horror film. I mean, when you think of Hammer horror, you typically think of the vampire ones mostly, because those were the most popular. But the first one was really the Frankenstein one. The Horror of Dracula was their second movie. Anyway, whatever. But I do. It's a hodgepodge, though, right? So in the original Boris Karloff Frankenstein, the bolts were on his neck, and here the bolts are on Data's forehead?
Forehead, yeah, right.
And then he doesn't have a flat top. He's got his
kind of looks flat, head. But I guess it's not.
Well, if you take a look, this is a different artist, I'm going to guess. But in next week's cover, we're in Data and Riker, or I guess Riker, the Wolfman, where they're at each other. I mean, Data's head looks normal. I mean, from the standpoint of
right,
it's round, his hair is combed back, whatever.
Right, he looks just like Data there.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But you're right. I mean, isn't the neck stuff, the neck stitching, don't they have that on the Universal one?
Yeah, but I mean, here the neck stitching makes sense because
they chopped his head off.
All these people started disappearing. Were they all going to different holodecks, or was somehow Red Jack able to start getting people from other places?
Good question. I don't know. They didn't tell us. All they said was people are going missing, and that's causing, where's mommy? Where's mommy?
Right. Yeah, and it's like random people. Like,
yes,
was cooking it.
Exactly.
They're
from all over the ship.
Right.
Yeah.
Medical security, I never heard of before, but it actually makes sense with, they do have a lot of deadly stuff there on the ship, so I guess it would make sense that they would need a security person, but
what a boring
I've never heard of it before.
Talk about a boring job.
Yeah, I got to guard the potions and stuff that Crusher's testing.
Exactly. So it's like, oh my God. I mean, couldn't you think that the regular security team could do that and kind of, rotate or something? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But no, he's medical security.
Exactly. And so obnoxious. It's like,
he was kind of a butt.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he shoots Red Jack, the mist. And then it kind of falls to the floor and he turns his back to it like, oh, I'm the best ever. And then in typical horror movie fashion, it gets up and kills him.
Exactly.
Why turn your back to it?
Because I'm a jerk. I'm an egomaniac jerk. Okay, so looking at one of the cover drawings from next week's issue, which shows Data across from a werewolf guy, which I think you're the first one that said, hey, that's probably Riker, and I think you're right. When I saw that, Frankenstein versus werewolf, it just took me back to my childhood, watching some of the old Universal horror movies and tie-ins with that, Abbott and Costello. So there were several different Universal films where Frankenstein fought the werewolf.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one was Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, 1943. Okay, so that was one from my childhood. Definitely remember that. And then Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Classic. Loved that movie. Loved it. I used to love Abbott and Costello. And then they brought them together with the monsters. It's like, oh my God, a match made in heaven. And the humor was pretty good.
Yeah, I haven't watched it since I was a kid, so I didn't like it as much because I grew up loving the monsters. So
the monsters.
Yeah, that was my favorite.
Okay. Would that means you can't enjoy that? Or
for whatever reason, I just didn't. I was just like, oh, they're not the same. That's not Herman. And so
Herman's just groaning. It's like, come on, that's not Herman.
Yeah, where's the big smile and the goofy laugh?
Anyway, I liked it, but that, I'm sure it's one of those things if I go back and watch it now, because I haven't seen that since, a long time. I mean, if I really watched it again, it probably wouldn't be as good as I remembered.
Sure.
Now I do look forward to seeing exactly how. I mean, this could just be a cover, so there may not be a fight between Riker Werewolf versus Data Frankenstein, because how would that work anyway? I mean,
well, I don't know, but we're about to review the second issue, so I guess we should already know.
Exactly. How is that going to work? Is Riker taken over by Rejak, or is somehow Riker being able to dress up as a wolfman, a werewolf, going to give him the ability to fight Data? I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so. And then what's up with Troy looking like the original Mummy? Not the Brendan Fraser one, but the old one. Just a female version. Thank you for watching this excerpt of episode 404 from the Star Trek Comic Book Review. This episode and all other episodes are available on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast from. Also, big thanks to the character art. And if you would like to share some character art, we would put it on the show. You can email us at the email above. Thank you, and please come back.